you guys can hear me, we are live. It did work, so we're all good. So. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Bridges Conversations. Let me do one thing here. Hold on. My name is Steve Givens. I'm the Executive Director of the Bridges Foundation in St. Louis. We are an organization that provides and presents the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius Loyola in everyday life. And we have a retreat that starts every year in September. It runs through about May. And if you want more information on that, I would just encourage you during our time together to check out this website. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Today, we're going to be talking with two of our recent retreatants. These are both gentlemen who completed our retreat this past year. And we're just going to talk for a half hour or so on their experience and what that was like. And we hope that sheds a little light for anyone who might be watching about what this experience is all about. So I'm going to bring, I'll bring them both online here. First, this is Don Landy, and this is Tim Kavanaugh. How are you guys doing today?
Good morning, Steve. Wonderful.
Good, thank you. Yeah, we're going to begin today with just kind of some, as we always do, just some kind of introductions from both of you. So Don, we'll go with you first. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, your faith formation earlier in your life, maybe a little bit about, career, what you've done professionally, just to kind of give us a little introduction to you.
Certainly. Again, as Steve mentioned, my name is Don Landy. I was born and raised and spent my entire life in St. Louis. I'm the fourth of 4 children, born and raised in Richmond Heights. I was raised Catholic. I attended Little Flower Grade School in Richmond Heights, attended St. Louis University High School, and also did my undergraduate at St. Louis University. I have continue to be a practicing Catholic, but up until about 5 or 6 years ago, it was more out of obligation rather than a deep spiritual conviction. And so I've been married since 1978. My wife and I will celebrate our 46th wedding anniversary in October. I have 2 boys, 43 years old. The oldest is 43, youngest is 40. Both of them attended Jesuit high schools and Jesuit colleges. Both reside currently in Austin, Texas. I have 2 grandchildren and two grandsons, I should say, and 2 wonderful daughter-in-laws. My wife and I could not be blessed with not having any girls. To have these 2 women in our lives has just been spectacular. I've worked for 3 companies over a career that spanned about 41 years. My expertise is mainly in the areas of finance operation and government relations. I retired in 2019. I'm an avid golfer. My wife and I enjoy the Muni every summer, and we like to travel. One of our most recent trips and favorite trips was fortunate enough to go to the Holy Land before all the nonsense has broken out in the Middle East, and we're certainly glad that we were able to do that. And then lastly, starting this month, I'll be undertaking 2 volunteer assignments one down at Siteman Cancer Center, and the other one with the Ignatian Spirituality Project. And I will say that both of these actions are an absolute direct result of the experience I had with the Spiritual Exercises Retreat.
Thanks for that. Thanks for a good introduction. Bring Tim back in here and give Don a chance to breathe. Tim Kavanaugh, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure, Steve. Thank you. Again, yes, Tim Kavanaugh. Again, a lifelong St. Louisan like Don. I grew up in Jennings, Missouri. I am the second of four. I have an older sister, a younger sister, and a younger brother. I went to grade school, St. Lucie Grade School in Jennings, no longer there, but
where I was married
for a while.
There you go.
Right, and then went to Jennings High School. I went to the University of Missouri at St. Louis here in town. So my faith tradition, I am a cradle Catholic. I have attended Mass and have been mostly faithful. It's good. It waxes and wanes, or it had up until the last few years, but have always had an attraction to the spiritual life in some fashion. And so as a career, I am an accountant, and I've done a lot of accounting right now. I work for an investment company, so I do accounting and some investment work here in town. I'm contemplating retirement, but I'm not quite there just yet. So I love sports. Like Don said, I too am an avid golfer, and I just enjoy all sports. I have my entire life. So I'm divorced. And I've been divorced for a while. I am getting married later this year. So so I have that to look forward to here in the fall. And I do not have children, but my bride-to-be has two wonderful children. So I look forward to sort of sharing some of those experiences with them. And neither is married yet or has children, but I look forward to that as well.
Thanks. And your bride-to-be, Barb, actually went through the spiritual exercises at the same time with you. Was that a good experience for the two of you to do that together?
It was. I think it was a great experience, really. I initially had decided to do the exercises, and I shared that with Barb, and we talked about it a little bit. And it is I know when I first heard about it, I think I can speak for her as well, the 9-month commitment, the daily prayer, what goes along with that. I just recall, I think both of us at the beginning were like, well, what about when, vacations or different things that come up, or you want to do, how is all this going to work? So, but we both came to the decision to do it together. And I think it was a terrific experience. And I think, what enhanced it for us was that although we did the exercises together and we're generally at the same place right throughout the exercises, we had different prayer partners. We used different materials. And I think that allowed us to kind of look at, to come at it from different points of view, but to share along the way. And so I think we really, after the meetings, after the prayer, after meeting with prayer partners in the group, I think we had some terrific discussions that have continued today. So I think it was great that we did it together.
Yeah, great. Let me bring Don back in here for a minute, and I'll put this up. We're not going to get too deep today into exactly what these spiritual exercises are. And if you want more information on that in our programs, here's where you can learn more. I think you'll pick up a little around the edges here if you listen. But I see we have a few viewers today on Facebook. If anybody out there has a question for me or for Tim or for Don as we go, please just leave that right in the Facebook chat there, or the Facebook comment section. I'll see it, and we'll get to them when we can. Tim, I'll give you a little break from talking and bring Don back in. Don, so you, as Tim said, you're cradle Catholic, born and raised, went through your whole kind of professional career. What do you think it was that eventually led you to want to experience and pray with and receive, is the verb we often use, receive the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius? What was it drove you to that experience, do you think?
In a word, cancer. In 2018, I was diagnosed with a sarcoma, and that brought to focus my mortality, maybe more so than it had in my life previously. And so I began to ask God to take care of me and to relieve the pain that I was having and sorrow that I had as a result of all this. And I suddenly realized that, and throughout this journey, there's been several areas or several instances of what I still believe were divine intervention, God working in strange ways and marvelous ways with me to get my attention. And one of them was I decided, after a 40-year absence of going to confession, I decided one afternoon when I was at the Adoration Chapel that I was going to, I promised God that I would go to confession. And I knew when I left the church that day that if I didn't act on that right away, that I'd probably postpone it, as I had for the 40 years prior to that. So I drove directly to the White House retreat and walked inside, and I saw Jason, and I said, I need to talk to a priest. And he said to me, well, it's not just that easy. The priests aren't just waiting here for some passerby to come in and want to talk to them. So he took my name, and next thing I know, I get a call from Father Jim Blumeyer. In late November of 18, I went down to the Jesuit residence at White House, and he heard my confession, and we had a lengthy discussion afterwards just about where I was in my life, how this cancer diagnosis had changed me. And so right towards the end, after he gave me his pearls of wisdom, he wrote on a piece of paper, he goes, I want you to read this book. And what he had written was Father Timothy Gallagher's book on the discernment of spirits. A wonderful book. I went home that night, ordered it, got it from Amazon. A couple of days later, started reading it. And I honestly didn't get off the very first page of the introduction when I realized what Father Gallagher was talking about in this particular example he was given. I said, that's me. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I actually saw myself. And a lot of the things that have happened to me over my lifetime, especially once I became an adult, I started to realize and started to understand why things were happening to me. And as I got deeper in the book, and the Discernment of Spirits book that Father Gallagher wrote focuses on the first week rules of discernment. There's 14 rules. And as I went through each one of those and the examples that he gave, all of a sudden things that had happened in my life, I started understanding why those were happening and what I wasn't doing appropriately to put myself back on the right course. So I gained certainly an understanding of how to understand what was going on in my life, how the evil spirit tempts you in ways that are both obvious and not so obvious. If you decide to do the exercises, you'll see in the second week rules that the evil ones will pose as the angel of light, making it look like he's posing as God. And so there's a whole host of things that happened during that period of time. I also started going to White House retreats. And for anybody that's been to a White House retreat, which I hadn't been since my senior year in high school, their retreats are focused on the exercises. So I got even more immersed into the exercises. I actually read the actual exercises, the the book that the retreat leader is typically reads in order to direct the retreatant. It was a difficult book to read, but it became more obvious and more understandable once I got in the Bridges retreat over that 9-month period, where, I'm sorry, 8-month period, where you start to understand the exercises and the mysticism behind them and the power behind them. So it was primarily that, which I wish it was something more where it was my deep faith that drew me to the exercises, but it was fear that moved me in that direction. And just one quick thing is in late summer of 22, I attended a informational meeting, which I know there's some coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and where Steve actually was running that particular session. And when I left there, I had the idea that, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. But over the course of the next couple of weeks, I found all the reasons not to do it. It wasn't so much me as much as I think the evil one was not wanting me does not want me getting any closer to God than I already was. So he started putting all these negative thoughts in my mind that I wasn't ready, I wasn't magnanimous enough, I wasn't going to be generous enough to be able to accomplish that. And it's like, and as Tim mentioned, you know, it's a pretty rigorous undertaking. So for all those reasons, I didn't do it. But in February of 23, I was introduced to Father Mark McKenzie, who became my spiritual director. And over the course of about 6 or 7 months, through our discussions and counseling, I came to realize that the exercises are what I should be doing. So I did sign up for it. And as Steve mentioned at the introduction here, that both Tim and I just completed our exercises back in May. And it was just a spectacular and marvelous experience that led to a lot of very good things in my life.
Thank you. Let's bring Tim back in here. Tim, yeah, just tell us a little bit about the kind of the road to deciding to participate in the Bridges retreat and the spiritual exercises, how that came about and what kind of led you to that.
Yeah, I would say it started really for me in 2016. I was going through some personal issues, and my sister, my younger sister, is really faith-filled. And, you know, I was talking to her a little bit and her husband about some of these things. And so they suggested a retreat. And so I signed up for an Acts retreat at the parish I was going to at the time. And it really got me on fire after attending that retreat. And so I knew I wanted to go deeper, and in something that, you know, I can only characterize as grace-filled. About the same time, right after that retreat, I reconnected with a colleague from 20 years past who I always thought very highly of. And that person was going down the path of becoming a spiritual director. And so the timing was, again, grace-filled. And so I started meeting regularly with this person and getting some spiritual direction. And I also had some spiritual direction through my place of employment as well. So, and I think what ultimately got me to the point of doing the Bridges retreat was the idea that prior to that first retreat, prior to spiritual direction, I just had not really considered the idea that God was in my life on a daily basis and putting things in front of me and guiding me. I just had no idea that pathway even really existed, even though, as I said, being a cradle Catholic and going to church, a lot of times, right, I think I just accepted the fact that sort of God was out there, but not necessarily disinterested, but certainly not in my life on a daily basis. And so I think as I continue the spiritual direction, I think to me the exercises, what attracted me, and also was the part that was gave me some apprehension, was the daily prayer and the commitment to that, because I felt like that then, and I feel like it now, that is the pathway to being present to what God is putting in front of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a real brief question, because we're running, it's about 20 after. I don't like these things to run too long, but maybe just real briefly, if you could each comment on this. So you were, as we mentioned, together at the site last year at Sacred Heart in Valley Park. One of the kind of the different things about the Bridges Retreat is that it's not just, you meeting with a spiritual director and making your way through the spiritual exercises, which is a valid and a valid way of doing the spiritual exercises. But the Bridges kind of experience of this includes a small group of people who meet regularly, either weekly or monthly, to kind of do it together, and to be there for each other, to share a little bit. Could you both just talk briefly about what that experience was like and how that experience of the small group kind of added to that experience? Don, I'll let you go first.
Well, first of all, our group was very diverse, both in gender, age, backgrounds, and levels of spirituality, or degrees of spirituality, which was wonderful. We seemed to mesh right away, but for me, in late October of 23, one of the outside, I'll call it outside events, was a faith sharing day where all the retreatants and prayer companions met on their own with everybody that was doing the retreats at that point, but we met as a group. And our moderator that day, who was one of the prayer companions, created an atmosphere where everybody wanted to share things about their lives, about their spirituality, gave opinions of readings that we were studying that day. And for me, I got to know each, not only the prayer companions, but more importantly, my fellow retreatants much better. And it seemed, even though it was good prior to that, it seemed all the meetings and all the interactions we had going forward really got a lot more meaningful to me following that particular event. And then the other thing too is listening to the sharing of the various opinions and thoughts and of our discussions on Tuesday evenings brought not only a deeper understanding of where those folks were coming from, but also gave me broadened my approach to understanding what a reading we might have been doing or the topic we were talking about that evening, which you wouldn't get if you were just doing it solely with a spiritual director. Mm-hmm. So and just one quick story. I've been communicating with a Protestant pastor, Protestant Christian pastor up in Minnesota, who's actually going through the exercises right now with a Jesuit priest, a retired Jesuit priest up in St. Paul. And he and I talk about every 3 or 4 weeks. And when I tell him about Bridges and our interactions, and I might share something that one of the retreatants or one of the prayer companions or one of the presenters had said at a previous meeting, and he thought in his sense is that he would be getting a lot more out of it if there were those kinds of interactions, even though he's enjoying the Jesuit priest that he's working with. The fact he's just in it by himself is a little, he just felt it'd be much better and a better experience by having more people involved, a community of sorts that you can interact with.
Yeah, yeah. We'll bring Tim back in. Tim, you got a few thoughts to add to that about this kind of small group experience?
Well, I think Don said it really well. One thing I think was important that I heard when he said people wanted to share, and I think wanted is the right word, because I do think that you got a sense of comfort and inclusiveness from the group, that you could feel comfortable sharing some of these things that, spiritually and then just personally, that perhaps a lot of the times you don't feel comfortable sharing. So I think that wanting to share was important. And I would just reiterate what Don had said about the group and being part of a group and listening to other people and their opinions and how they, their faith sharing and some of their spirituality. And then again, the presenters and the other prayer partners who are there just really enhanced the experience. Because a lot of the time you have your takeaway, but when you listen to other people and hear how they may think about it or look at things, it helps you to reflect further, which I think is the point of a lot of this, is to continue to reflect on a lot of these exercises beyond just your initial sort of take.
Yeah, thank you. Before I forget, let me just mention a couple of things. One, something that Don just said reminded me just to mention that these spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius clearly come out of the Jesuit and Catholic tradition, but the experience itself is very ecumenical, and we have people from many different Christian faith traditions who take part in our program every year, and I think it makes the experience even richer to have that kind of sharing. So I wanted to mention that. Secondly, real quick, you've heard us mention our sites, the sites at Sacred Heart Valley Park or whatever. The Bridges Retreat consists of a couple of things. One, it's as Tim mentioned earlier, it's an hour of prayer, a commitment to about an hour of prayer every day following these spiritual exercises, and a prayer companion to help guide you through that experience. So it's that hour of prayer a day. It's about an hour-long meeting once a week with the small group we're talking about, and then another hour one-on-one with your prayer companion. So it's a great, intimate, and powerful way to experience this. So, and this coming year, we're going to have sites on Tuesday nights at DeSmet High School, Wednesday mornings at Glendale Presbyterian near Webster Groves. Wednesday, we have an online group. People come from all over for that. Thursday evening, we'll be at All Saints in St. Peter's. And then we have some Saturday morning sessions, which are a little bit different, but basically the same thing, at St. Louis University High School, and also at St. Matthew the Apostle Church in North St. Louis, just north of St. Louis University. So just wanted to throw that little pitch in. Let's wrap this up with one more question for each of you, although it's not a quick question, I realize, but talk a little bit about maybe what you consider any kind of great takeaways from your time praying the spiritual exercises. How were you changed, or what was the impact of this experience on your life? So we'll kind of end with that today. We'll bring Don back in here and let him start.
Well, first of all, and I know Tim will mention this as well, and already has, about the daily prayer and the framework that provides for you in terms of reading scripture, and you're actually reading it. At least for me, I would always hear scripture readings at church, but I never really gave much thought to it. What Tim and I used the same guide going through the exercises, and there was a requirement to sort of dig into the meanings of the gospel, how they speak to you, what Jesus was doing, what the prophets might have been speaking about. For the first time in my life, I've actually learned how to read Scripture and get some meaning out of it that's meaningful to me. I also, probably most important thing is I've learned how to listen for God's voice, and more importantly, as you'll find in the fourth week of actions, or doing a deed is much greater than words might speak. And so once you're hearing God's voice, will you act upon it and actually take affirmative action to do something? So then just that, notice that idea of while it's sort of intuitive that you want to follow Jesus, but until you realize just how difficult it is, that it's a difficult road to follow Jesus. But the fact of man, follow God. The fact of the matter is, the exercises certainly give you the tools to be able to navigate that path. And so, for those are the things for me that stood out as I journeyed through the exercises, and now afterwards, actually putting those practices into actions.
Thanks very much. Tim, how about you? Well, I think Don, what he touched on with the readings themselves and the exercises and going through the process of reading Scripture and going deeper into some of the parables in Jesus's life, I think it does open up. It opened up my mind to other ways of sort of understanding Jesus's teachings, his life, what he was here to try to help people to understand. And that really takes me back to my initial thought when you asked that question, Steve, was that believing the exercises, the early part of the exercises in particular, but it built off of that, in believing that regardless of how I have lived my life to this point, I'm loved. And right, I can't change that. I am loved by God immeasurably, and you can't change that. And I think the exercises really helped to bring that home. And for me, that is always right. I'm quick to tell myself that you've done this, you've done that, how can I be loved? But I think it really, the whole program, but the first part is more focused there, but the entire program just, to me, sort of keeps bringing home that point. And I thought that for me was a takeaway that was really important. Thank you. Well, let's bring Don back in. We'll kind of wrap up, but thank you very much, both of you, for kind of sharing your Bridges stories. Again, I put our website up on the screen there. I invite you to, if you haven't been there already, to check it out. There's videos, there's frequently asked questions, there's ways to get involved, and how to go about getting more information. As one of you guys mentioned, we have a series of information sessions coming up this summer, including one tonight at 7 o'clock at All Saints Parish in St. Peter's, but we got some other ones coming up too. You'll find that on the website. We would encourage you, if you have an inkling that you might be interested, to just come out and learn more and talk to us. So I think that is all for today. I thank you guys very much. If you can just hang on for a minute after we go off the air, I'll wrap it up with you off there. Any parting words you just dying to say that I didn't let you say?
Well, for anybody that's out there that's sitting on the fence, I would definitely go to one of the informational meetings, and I would pray hard about it, because it is a commitment, but what you come out the other end is well worth the effort that you put forth. Even the journey that you make as you're going through that, every week, every day is a learning experience, and for me was invaluable in terms of being able to live my life from here on out in a much better way than I did the first 69 years. So.
Yeah. Well said, Don. I have nothing to add to that.
I always say these information sessions, we are not there to sell you anything
No.
or try to convince you. As Don said, he went through a lot of the discernment and then decided, the year before wasn't the right time for him. And so I said, you know what, we'll be here a year from now if you want it. And he came back. So we're here just to give you some information and to open this as a possibility for you. So please check us out. All right, we're going to wrap it up.
Just one quick thing.
Yeah, go.
Tim, I want to congratulate you and Barb. Make sure you tell her congratulations.
Thank you. Now,
so happy for the two of you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right, I think we'll not have an episode in August. We've got a lot of other things going on, but we'll pick up Bridges Conversations again with an episode in September. So keep an eye on our Facebook page, on your inbox if you're already on our mailing list. All right, we're going to call it a day. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Yep, take care, everyone.
You bet.